Hi everyone, this is a dispatch for Wednesday, May 6th. We start with Psalm 100 for the last time today, and then we move to the prophet Jeremiah in the Old Testament. And language here from this prophet in many ways echoes the language we've seen from the prophet Ezekiel, talking about Israel's shepherd being God. But Jeremiah begins by calling out the kings of Judah as essentially as inadequate shepherds. These shepherds scattered the flock rather than gathered it together. And so God will come and regather the flock, that is Israel, and place over that flock essentially a king in the line of David. So very much along the lines of what Ezekiel was saying. The prophet Jeremiah was towards the earlier end of exile, whereas Ezekiel was more during and later in that time period. So they're close but not exactly the same. So for Jeremiah there is very much a tone of impending doom and judgment, and yet words of hope during exile. And so here Jeremiah is laying out the consequences of Israel's failed leadership and reassuring the people that God will exert leadership over Israel once again, that God will be their shepherd and will remain true to the promise that God made to David so many centuries earlier. And then at the end of this passage, Jeremiah says that the return from exile will have the same power as the Exodus did for God's people. So Jeremiah says that no longer will we say, the God who led us out of Egypt, we will say the God who gathered us back together, the God who returned us from exile. It will become that formative of a moment for God's people. That's the work that God is about to do. All right, so then we go to the New Testament, to Matthew's Gospel, Matthew 20, a story of a couple of Jesus' disciples. Their mom goes to Jesus and says, "Hey Jesus, when all is said and done and you're glorified, would you just let my sons sit at your right and your left hand?" It's almost comical, this mother stepping into metal on behalf of her sons. Though it's interesting to note that this same story appears in Mark's Gospel, at least. It might also be in Luke's, but I know for sure it's in Mark. But in Mark's Gospel, James and John, the sons of Zebedee, who actually are not named in Matthew, James and John go to Jesus, and they ask him that question themselves. So either Matthew had different information, or what I think is more likely, the story was so embarrassing about these disciples asking Jesus to elevate them over their peers that Matthew decides to have their mother ask the question instead. In any case, Jesus is quick to respond that they can't drink the cup that he's drinking of. They can't possibly know what they're asking of Jesus. And then, of course, the disciples get really mad that James and John have tried to get themselves elevated above. And it just reveals how little the disciples at this point understand about the purpose and the nature of Jesus' work. Jesus then gives them a little bit of a lecture on what real leadership looks like. Leadership is servanthood, not lording power over others. It's a wonderful story, a great glimpse at the way that Jesus is turning our assumptions upside down in almost everything that he does. One quick update for today, and that is just a reminder that our book discussion takes place this morning at 10 o'clock. We're talking about the book by N.T. Wright called Simply Jesus, but if you're not reading it, you're welcome to join us anyways. I think you'll find the discussion interesting, so that's today at 10 o'clock. I'll be sending out an email this morning with the link to join the class. That's it for today. Have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow.